The camera above desk C12 blinked like a tiny red heartbeat, and I smiled at it before anyone else in the examination hall understood why that seat mattered. It was fixed to the ceiling beam above the center aisle, tucked between two square fluorescent panels, angled downward so sharply that most students hated sitting beneath it. They said it made them feel like criminals before they even opened the paper. They said the lens caught every nervous scratch, every lip movement, every trembling hand reaching for water. In my first life, I had believed them. I had begged to sit somewhere less exposed, somewhere softer, somewhere behind the row of tall boys near the window where the morning sun struck the desks and blurred the camera view. That small cowardice had ruined me. This time, with my admission card warm in my palm and my pulse steady enough to scare me, I walked straight to the brightest desk in the hall, placed my transparent pencil case exactly inside the tape square, and lowered myself into the chair as if I had chosen a throne. Nobody noticed at first. That was the beauty of revenge when it was done properly. It did not enter the room wearing armor or shouting accusations. It arrived as a girl sitting down where she was told, smoothing her skirt, lining up 3 pens, and pretending she had not spent an entire previous life learning how one invisible corner could become a grave. Behind me, chair scraped. Whispered greetings passed from row to row. The candidates of St. Aurelia Academy filed in wearing pressed uniforms, polished shoes, and the desperate faces of people who had been told since childhood that one examination could separate the chosen from the forgotten. Somewhere near the rear entrance, Leora Vane laughed softly. I did not turn around. I knew the sound too well. Silver over poison. Gentle enough to make teachers lean in, sharp enough to cut anyone who stood too close. In my first life, that laugh had been the last friendly sound I heard before the investigation began. The National Laureate examination was not just a test. It was a door to scholarships, university placements, ministry training contracts, and the kind of future families placed on living room altars beside wedding photos and ancestral medals. Our class had prepared for it like soldiers preparing for a siege. We woke before dawn, slept after midnight, ate rice cakes over textbooks, and measured our worth in mock rankings taped to the corridor wall every Friday. I had ranked first in the mocks for 7 months straight, but nobody called me a genius. They called me useful. Leora ranked second, but everyone called her the Golden Girl because she knew how to make losing look temporary. She could cry without smearing her mascara, apologize without admitting fault, and borrow without ever returning. Last time, when she asked to sit behind me because she was anxious, I moved without thinking. Last time, when half the class copied from the rhythm of my pen, I assumed the rustle behind me was ordinary exam nerves. Last time, when answer patterns matched mine too closely and 26 students claimed I had sold them signals, the hall camera showed nothing clear enough to save me. I remembered the disciplinary room more clearly than my own funeral. It had smelled of varnish, coffee, and rain-damp wool. 3 administrators sat behind a long table while my answer booklet lay open beneath a glass paperweight like a dead insect. They did not ask whether I had cheated. They asked why I had done it. That difference mattered. A question can be a bridge, but theirs was already a cage. Leora cried beside her mother, saying she had trusted me, saying I had promised to help everyone, saying she thought I was only sharing a method and never imagined I was running a cheating ring. One by one, my classmates lowered their eyes and repeated the same phrase. I copied because Mara told us it was safe.
Mara.
My own name sounded foreign in their mouths, as if they had borrowed that too. The camera footage from my original seat was useless. My back had blocked my paper, the sun had glared across the lens, and the row behind me had been hidden by the angle of the window frame. In the official record, uncertainty became guilt because too many guilty people had agreed on the same lie. After that, my life narrowed until it fit inside the word expelled. My scholarship disappeared first, then my university offer, then the tutoring job that had paid for my grandmother's medicine. People who had once begged for my notes crossed the street rather than greet me. My aunt told relatives I had always been too ambitious. My teachers sent polite messages saying they wished things had turned out differently, as if things were weather and not choices. Leora entered the National College that autumn wearing a white coat in the orientation photo, smiling from the center, while two girls who had testified against me held flowers beside her. I watched from a cracked phone screen in the pharmacy queue, buying the cheapest pain tablets I could afford for a grandmother who had stopped asking when my appeal would be heard. 2 winters later, after my final appeal was rejected because the Academy had insufficient basis to reopen a closed integrity matter, I stepped into a crosswalk with a fever in my bones and no umbrella. I remember headlights blooming white. I remember the smell of rain. Then I remember the camera blinking above desk C12. The proctor, Mr. Soren, walked past me with his clipboard and paused. He was thinner than I remembered, with silver hair combed too flat against his head and a permanent frown carved between his eyebrows. In my first life, I had feared him because he never smiled. In this life, I trusted him for exactly that reason. He looked at my admission card, then at the seat number printed on the desk. Mara Ellison, C12.
Correct, he said.
His pen tapped the board twice. You are aware this seat is directly under active surveillance. I lifted my eyes to the camera, and then back to him. Yes, sir. My voice did not tremble. That surprised both of us. He nodded and moved on, but I saw the smallest crease of curiosity at the corner of his mouth.
Good.
Curiosity was a seed. By the end of the morning, I intended to grow a forest from it. The first disruption came before the bell. Leora appeared beside my desk with her admission card held against her chest like a wounded bird. She had chosen a pale blue ribbon for her hair, the same one from my first life, soft and childish enough to make her look harmless. Behind her clustered the usual satellites, Mina with her nervous fingers, Cass with the expensive watch, Dahlia, who never spoke unless Leora looked at her first, and 3 boys from our advanced logic class who pretended not to care about rank while memorizing every point difference. Leora's eyes widened when she saw where I was sitting. For one beautiful second, her mask slipped. Not much. Just enough for me to glimpse panic moving beneath the gold. Mara, she whispered, bending close. Are you sure this is your seat? I thought you liked the window row. You always said the light helped you think. I changed my preference request, I said, uncapping a pen and testing it on the scrap paper provided. A neat blue line appeared. Straight, ordinary, fatal. The window gives me headaches. Leora blinked. She had expected fear, maybe confusion, maybe the soft guilt I used to carry like a school bag. But C12 is awful, Mina blurted from behind her. The camera sees everything. I looked up with a smile gentle enough to pass as innocence. That is why it feels safe. Silence opened around us. A few nearby students glanced over, then quickly away. Nobody liked the word safe on examination morning. It made them think of all the ways safety could be lost. Leora recovered first, of course. She laughed lightly and touched my shoulder. I had to force myself not to flinch. You are so brave, she said. I could never concentrate with a camera right above me. I placed my pen exactly parallel to the desk edge. Then you should be grateful you are not sitting here. Her hand tightened on my shoulder for half a breath before she let go. The old Mara would have apologized for sounding cold. The new Mara let the sentence sit between us like a blade laid politely on a table. Leora walked to the row behind me, because that was where she had arranged her people. In my first life, she had needed me in the blind spot and herself behind my left shoulder, close enough to read my answer rhythm but hidden enough to pretend she had only glanced forward in panic. This time, the seating roster had resisted her. I knew because I had submitted a medical light sensitivity form 2 weeks early, requesting a central desk away from the windows. I had attached an optometrist note, a stamped academy approval, and a copy sent directly to the examination board. Leora had not known. She had spent days bribing the hall assistant for the old window arrangement, only to find me calmly beneath the sharpest camera in the room. Still, she sat behind me. Greed makes clever people stupid when the prize is close enough to smell. The second disruption came from my pencil case. I emptied it slowly. 3 pens. 1 pencil. 1 eraser. 1 ruler. Nothing else. Then, I raised my hand. Mr. Soren approached. Problem. I would like my desk recorded as cleared before the exam begins, I said. Last year, there were rumors about hidden notes in transparent cases. I do not want any misunderstanding. A ripple moved through the rows behind me. Someone coughed. Someone else muttered a curse under her breath. Mr. Soren's frown sharpened, but not with annoyance. He looked from my empty case to the camera above me, then made a note on his clipboard. Desk C12 cleared at 8:41. He said it aloud. That mattered. The microphone at the front of the hall would catch it. The camera would catch it. The students behind me would know it had been caught. Leora leaned back in her chair so quietly that only I heard the wood creak. In my first life, Leora's plan had not relied only on copying my answers. She had planted a folded formula slip in my pencil case during the bag check, then used it later as proof that I had prepared signals. The formula slip was not even useful. It had been theater. Investigators love physical evidence because it feels less emotional than testimony. This time, there would be no slip, no shadow, no convenient discovery after everyone had already agreed I was guilty. I had spent the Reborn week collecting small protections, not dramatic weapons. A desk clearance request. A seat change approval. A hall camera angle map downloaded from the board's public safety report. A signed statement from the invigilator at the practice examination confirming that Leora had asked where I would sit. Tiny stones placed one after another until they formed a wall. The bell rang once, deep and metallic. Papers were distributed face down. The hall changed at once. Before the bell, we had been students. After it, we became hands, eyes, breath, and fear. Mr. Soren read the instructions in his dry, precise voice. No communication.
Non autorised material.
No electronic devices. No looking at another candidate's work. Any breach would result in immediate investigation and possible expulsion. The words slid across the hall like a net. Behind me, I heard Leora exhale. In my first life, that exhale had comforted me. I had thought she was nervous. Now I knew it was timing. One breath after the instruction. 2 taps of her pen against the desk. A shift of her left foot. Signals for the row behind her to begin watching me as soon as the paper turned. When Mr. Soren gave the command, 700 papers flipped over like wings. I looked down at mine and nearly laughed. The first question was different from the previous life. Not completely, but enough. The board had changed the opening logic problem, replacing the railway schedule puzzle with a court registry sequencing question. That alone would destroy anyone who had memorized last life's paper from stolen rumors, but Leora was not depending on memory. She was depending on me. So I gave her exactly what she deserved. Nothing useful. For the first 10 minutes, I read every question without writing an answer. I underlined verbs. I circled dates. I drew a tiny square in the margin of the scrap sheet and shaded it carefully. Behind me, the energy shifted from confidence to confusion. Pens hesitated. A shoe tapped twice. Someone breathed too loudly through her nose. Leora wanted my rhythm, and I gave her silence. Then I began to write, but not in the way she expected. I solved the first problem correctly on the scrap paper, then marked a wrong option on the answer sheet, paused long enough for anyone watching to copy, and immediately erased it so thoroughly that no mark remained. The camera above me saw my hand, my eraser, my final answer. The students behind me saw only the first motion. 3 desks back, a pen scratched quickly. 4 desks back, another followed. I did not need to look. Sound tells the truth when eyes are busy lying. I repeated the pattern twice more, never too obviously, never in a way that could be called signaling. A false mark, an erase, a corrected answer. All within my own desk, all under the camera's gaze. Every wrong answer I let them steal was a breadcrumb. Every correction I made afterward was a locked door. At 20 minutes, Mr. Soren began walking the aisles. He had the step of a man who wanted silence to be afraid of him. He paused beside my row, glanced at my paper, then at the candidates behind me. I kept working. I did not stiffen. I did not perform innocence. Innocence performed too loudly becomes desperation. Leora had taught me that in my first life, sitting beside her mother with tears shining in her eyes while I sat dry-eyed because shock had emptied me of everything soft. This time, I let my calm look boring. Mr. Soren moved on. Leora resumed almost instantly. Her arrogance would have been funny if it had not once killed me. She believed that because teachers loved her, rules bent around her. She believed that because I had been kind once, I would always be usable. She believed that a camera watched people in front of it, not the shadows behind them. The third disruption arrived in the form of a dropped pen. Mina's pen clattered under my chair at 37 minutes. It rolled against my left shoe, blue plastic bright against the gray floor. In my first life, I had picked it up without thinking. That small movement had given the row behind me a clear look at my answer sheet while I leaned down. Later, investigators said the footage showed me engaging in suspicious movement. It did not show Mina smiling. This time, I raised my hand and did not move. Mr. Soren turned. Candidate C11 dropped a pen beneath my desk. I said calmly, "I am not touching it." Mina made a tiny sound, half gasp, half protest. Mr. Soren came over, retrieved the pen himself, and placed it on Mina's desk. He looked at her for a long moment. "Keep your materials under control." His voice was not loud, but the hall heard. Behind me, Leora's breathing changed again. That was when I felt the first real crack in their plan. Copying requires confidence. Cheating groups do not collapse because one person panics. They collapse because panic spreads faster than instructions can contain it. I continued working, now at full speed. My mind, despite everything, still loved problems. That was the unfairest part of my first life. They had not only stolen my future, they had made me afraid of the one thing that had always belonged to me. As I moved through the paper, confidence returned to my fingers. Court registry sequence, done. Ethical reasoning scenario, done. Data interpretation, done. Case comparison, done. Each answer landed cleanly. Behind me, the scratching became frantic. They had missed the first 10 minutes waiting for me. They had copied false starts. They had been interrupted by the dropped pen. Now they needed my pace, but they had lost the rhythm. Halfway through, Leora tried the cough. 1 soft cough meant slow down. 2 meant repeat the previous answer. 3 meant turn a page dramatically so the left column flashed visible. In my first life, I had obeyed without knowing I was obeying. I had slowed because I worried she was unwell. I had turned pages carefully because I did not want to disturb anyone. This time, when she coughed once, I sped up. When she coughed twice, I placed my left arm over my answer sheet in the approved resting position printed in the rules. When she coughed 3 times, I raised my hand again. Mr. Soren's had snapped toward me with open disbelief, as if even he was beginning to realize I was not nervous, but deliberate. "Candidate behind me appears unwell," I said. "Should she be checked?" The hall froze. Leora's chair scraped. "I'm fine," she whispered quickly. Too quickly. The assistant proctor, Ms. Hale, came down the aisle anyway. She was young, severe, and famous for failing her own cousin during a practice invigilation because he had written after the bell. "Stand," she told Leora. "If you are coughing repeatedly, you may take water at the side." Leora's face flushed delicate pink. "Really, I'm fine." "Then stop interrupting the room." Ms. Hale's voice carried less than Mr. Soren's, but cut deeper. Leora sat. Her friends did not move. I looked down at question 32 and answered it correctly. My hand did not shake until I turned the page, and even then the camera would only see a girl adjusting paper beneath the light. The fourth disruption was not mine. It came from the ceiling. At exactly 10:17, the camera above me clicked and rotated a fraction wider. Most candidates did not notice. I did, because I had spent 3 evenings in my second life reading the board's surveillance maintenance notes and learning that the central cameras widened angle after 90 minutes to capture fatigue misconduct. In my first life sitting by the window, I had not known there were camera phases. Leora had known just enough to exploit the blind first angle, not enough to respect the second. When the lens adjusted, it caught not only my desk but the full row behind me, including Leora's left hand, Mina's eyes, Cass's folded sleeve, and the boy in C16 tilting his paper to reflect the light. The camera did not accuse. It simply watched. That made it more powerful than any witness in the room. I waited until the final section to set the last trap. The essay prompt was about institutional integrity. I nearly admired the cruelty of it. In my first life, the prompt had been about public duty, and Leora had copied my opening lines so closely that the committee later said I must have distributed a model response. This time, I wrote slowly enough for the first sentence to be visible if someone behind me strained. Integrity is not proven by trust, but by what remains when trust is removed. It was a good line. Too good. I knew they would take it. I let my pen hover, let my shoulders relax, let the page remain uncovered for exactly 7 seconds. Behind me, for pens began moving. Then I crossed out the sentence with one clean line and began again. A system that depends on private goodness alone has already failed. The final essay became mine, and the stolen opening became theirs. By the last bell, I had finished with 8 minutes to spare. I placed my pen down, folded my hands, and looked straight ahead. That was the hardest part. Not solving the paper. Not resisting Leora's signals. Not hearing the class behind me destroy themselves line by line. The hardest part was staying still while my old life screamed for vindication. I wanted to turn around and see their faces. I wanted Leora to know I knew. I wanted Mina to feel the humiliation she had handed me with trembling fake innocence. But revenge, like examination writing, rewards those who do not waste time on decoration. So I sat beneath the red camera light and let the hall swallow its own tension until Mr. Soren said, "Pens down." The sound of pen stopping is never complete. There is always one extra scratch, one desperate, one candidate who believes rules are flexible if their future is important enough. This time, the extra scratches came from behind me.
Not 1. 6.
Ms. Hales had lifted immediately. Row C, hands visible. Her voice cracked across the hall. My hands were already on the desk. Leora's were not. She lifted them a second late, palms open, face arranged into wounded confusion. I stopped, she said. Nobody had accused her yet. That was her mistake. Mr. Soren and Ms. Hale exchanged one look, the kind adults use when a suspicion becomes a procedure. Answer booklets were collected row by row. When Ms. Hale reached me, I handed mine over with my candidate card on top. She glanced at the desk clearance note on Mr. Soren's clipboard, then at my empty pencil case, then at the camera above me. Her expression did not soften, but it changed. Recognition, maybe. We were told to remain seated while preliminary scan sheets were checked. That was unusual. Murmurs rose at once. The front rows whispered about technical errors. The back rows muttered about delays. Behind me, Leora leaned forward. "Mara," she breathed, soft enough that only I could hear. "What did you do?"
There it was.
Not what happened. Not are you okay. What did you do? Because deep inside, she already knew the game had shifted. I did not turn. "I sat my exam," I said. "You should have done the same." The silence behind me was better than applause. 10 minutes became 20. The hall grew hot. Candidates who had finished cleanly grew irritated, then worried. Candidates who had not began bargaining with invisible gods. At the front, 2 board officials entered wearing dark suits and carrying tablets. One of them was Director Vale, the head of examination integrity, a woman whose gray hair was pinned so tightly it looked like an act of discipline. In my first life, she had signed the final decision against me. I had hated her for years. In this life, I understood something I had been too broken to see. She had judged the evidence she had, and Leora had made sure the evidence pointed at me. Today, I had given her different evidence. Director Vale spoke without a microphone. She did not need one. "Candidates will remain seated. We are reviewing an active integrity concern involving visual copying, unauthorized coordination, and post-bell writing in Section C." The hall erupted. Not loudly, because fear has manners in examination halls, but enough that Mr. Soren had to order silence twice. My heartbeat beat once, twice, then steadied. Leora stood suddenly. "Director, I need to say something." Ms. Hale moved so fast that Leora barely finished the sentence. "Sit down." Leora's eyes shone. Beautiful tears, ready on command. I saw Mara acting strangely. She kept erasing answers and raising her hand. I think she was signaling. There was the old knife, polished and thrown again. Only this time, it hit glass. Director Vale turned her tablet toward Mr. Soren. Candidate C12 is Mara Ellison? Yes, he said. Desk cleared before start. Multiple procedural cautions were initiated by candidate C12, not against her. Ms. Hale added. She refused to touch dropped material, reported repeated coughing, surrendered all materials visibly, and remained within camera view for the entire session. The hall went quiet in a new way. Leora's tears paused on her lower lashes as if even they were unsure where to fall. Director Vale tapped her tablet. The surveillance angle above C12 shows candidate C12 making initial marks, erasing them, and entering final responses. It also shows candidates C13 through C21 copying the initial marks before corrections were made. A chair squealed behind me. Someone whispered. No, Director Vale did not blink. It further shows coordinated visual tracking from candidates in rows D and E. I had imagined this moment too many times. In my first life, revenge had been a fantasy. I chewed like stale bread when hunger made me cruel. I imagined shouting. I imagined Leora collapsing. I imagined the class begging my forgiveness. Reality was quieter and stranger. Mina began crying first, small hiccuping sobs. Cass argued that looking forward was not copying. The boy in C16 said he had neck pain. Dahlia said she thought everyone was allowed to check pacing. Each excuse made the trap tighter because none of them matched the others. Leora stayed silent the longest. That was how I knew she understood. She had built the original lie on unity. Everyone says Mara signaled. Everyone saw the same thing. Everyone tells one story. Today, panic had shattered them into separate people with separate selfishness. Director Vale ordered candidates C13 through C21, D13 through D21, and E13 through E21 to stand. Chairs dragged. Knees trembled. 27 students rose behind me, including almost every person who had testified against me in my first life. I remained seated. The camera blinked above me like a patient star. Leora finally spoke, and her voice had lost its honey. This is unfair. She set us up. Director Vale's eyes moved to her. Explain how candidate C12 compelled you to copy answers from her paper. Leora opened her mouth. Closed it. Tried again. She knew we trusted her. A sound moved through the hall. Not laughter exactly, but shock wearing laughter's coat. Director Vale leaned forward slightly. Trust is not permission to read another candidate's work. They were let out in 2 lines. Not dragged. Not shouted at. Let out, which somehow looked worse. Expulsion does not need violence when procedure is strong enough. As Leora passed my desk, she turned her head. For a moment, I saw the girl beneath the golden girl, frightened, furious, young, and still convinced that consequences were something poorer, quieter people were supposed to absorb for her. You ruined everyone, she whispered. I finally looked at her. Not long. Just enough. No, I said. I moved into the light. You followed with dirty hands. Her face changed, as if I had slapped her. Ms. Hale touched her elbow and guided her onward. The remaining candidates sat frozen while the officials explained the delay. Those not involved would have papers processed normally. Those removed would face immediate disqualification, pending final review. Any candidate attempting to contact removed students before the investigation concluded would risk sanctions. The words fell like stones into deep water. Around me, people avoided my eyes. Some because they had doubted me. Some because they had almost joined Leora. Some because watching punishment happen makes even innocent people check their pockets for guilt. Mr. Soren eventually dismissed us row by row. When my turn came, he held my admission card a moment longer than necessary. You were very careful today, he said. It was not a question. I had reason to be. He nodded once. Careful students are often called paranoid until their records prove otherwise. Outside the hall, the courtyard had turned white with noon heat. Parents waited beyond the iron gates holding water bottles, umbrellas, and expectations heavy enough to bend steel. Rumor traveled faster than dismissed candidates. By the time I stepped down the stairs, half the courtyard knew a group had been removed. By the time I reached the gate, they knew Leora's name. Her mother stood near the fountain in a cream suit, phone pressed to her ear, face pale with disbelief. In my first life, that woman had looked at me across the disciplinary table and said, "Girls like you always resent girls like my daughter." Today, she looked through me without recognition, searching the crowd for the daughter procedure had swallowed. My grandmother waited beneath the jacaranda tree across the road. She should not have come. Her knees hated stairs and heat made her dizzy. But there she was, tiny under a lavender umbrella, wearing the blue cardigan she saved for important days. In my first life, I had walked toward her after the exam smiling because I thought everything was over. Hours later, the accusation arrived. Days later, her smile began disappearing from the edges. This time, when she saw my face, she did not ask whether I passed. She touched my cheek and said, "You look like you set down something heavy." I laughed once, and it came out broken. "Maybe." She looked past me to the gates, where officials were separating angry parents from terrified students. "Did they hurt you again?" I shook my head. "They tried the old way." Her hand tightened around mine. "And you?" I chose a better seat. The investigation concluded faster than my first life's accusation had. That was another lesson. Institutions move slowly when truth is tangled, quickly when evidence is clean. By evening, the examination board suspended 27 candidates. By Wednesday, St. Aurelia Academy issued formal notices of expulsion for 18, withdrawal of honors for 6, and disciplinary probation for 3 who had looked but not copied enough to complete a pattern. By Friday, the National Laureate Board released a statement confirming coordinated visual copying, attempted manipulation of candidate C12, and false preliminary testimony by multiple candidates. They did not publish my name, but everyone knew. The same group chats that had once called me a cheat now filled with messages like "I always thought Mara was innocent" and "Leora seemed fake anyway." I deleted them without replying. Vindication tastes cleanest when not mixed with begging. Leora's family appealed. Of course they did. They hired lawyers, requested footage, claimed camera distortion, accused the board of psychological entrapment, and suggested that my unusual conduct had encouraged confusion. The appeal hearing was held in the same varnished room where my first life had ended. This time, I entered through the front door with my grandmother beside me and sat at the witness table under bright lights. Director Vale played the footage once. Then again. There was my desk cleared, my hands visible, my first marks erased, my final answers different. Behind me, Leora and the others leaning, tracking, copying, whispering through coughs and dropped pens. The room watched truth replay without needing me to decorate it. When Leora's lawyer asked whether I had intentionally sat beneath the camera to catch his client, I answered honestly. I sat there so nobody could lie about me again. That answer traveled. Someone leaked it from the hearing notes, and within a week it became a headline on student forums. I sat there so nobody could lie about me again. People made it poetic. They made it brave. They made it about resilience and justice and all the pretty words that appear after damage becomes undeniable. I did not feel poetic. I felt tired. I slept 12 hours the night after the appeal was rejected. When I woke, sunlight lay across my desk, and for the first time since returning, I did not immediately check whether the past had changed its mind. My admission portal showed my paper accepted. My ranking remained pending, but my candidate status was clean.
Clean.
A small word. A holy one. The results came 3 weeks later. I ranked first nationally. Not because revenge gave me brilliance, not because suffering magically sharpened the mind, but because once nobody was stealing my breath, I could finally use all of it. The academy held a ceremony they pretended had always been planned. The principal shook my hand on stage beneath banners about integrity. Teachers who had doubted me clapped too loudly. Students watched with faces arranged into respect. I accepted the certificate, gave a short speech, and did not mention Leora. That disappointed some people. They wanted drama, a final cut, the golden girl named under the lights. But my victory was not her humiliation. My victory was standing on a stage without needing her name to explain mine. After the ceremony, Director Vale found me near the side exit. Up close, she looked older than she had in either life. "You should know," she said, "the board is reviewing older footage from previous mock examinations. There may have been patterns we missed." My throat tightened. She did not apologize. Maybe she could not. Maybe institutions avoid apologies because apologies admit the floor can crack beneath anyone. But she held my gaze and added, "We failed to protect you from suspicion before it formed. I am sorry for that. It was not enough for my first life. Nothing could be. But it was something for this one." I nodded. "Protect the next girl faster." Her expression shifted, almost a smile. "We'll try." Months later, at the National College orientation, I walked into a lecture theater and chose a seat in the middle, not under a camera, not hidden by a window, just a normal seat among normal students who did not know my old shame unless they searched my name. For a moment, my hand hovered over the desk before I sat. Trauma makes maps out of furniture. It tells you every chair might be a trap, every shadow might hold a witness, every friendly laugh might be a rehearsal for betrayal. Then a girl beside me offered me a spare highlighter and asked whether I understood the timetable. She looked nervous. Ordinary nervous, not poisonous nervous. I took the highlighter and thanked her. Healing, I discovered, did not feel like forgetting. It felt like choosing not to punish strangers for crimes committed by ghosts. On the first day of ethics seminar, the professor asked us to define integrity. Around me, students offered polished answers about honesty, accountability, duty, and public trust. I wrote nothing at first. My pen rested between my fingers, light and steady. Then I thought of desk C12, the red camera light, Leora's face when procedure became stronger than charm, my grandmother under the jacaranda tree, and the strange mercy of having one morning returned to me. When the professor called on me, I said, "Integrity is what survives being watched." A few students turned. The professor tilted her head. "And what if nobody is watching?" I smiled, not sweetly, not cruelly, just enough to feel the scar and not the wound. "Then you should act like the truth has a camera anyway." That became the ending people liked to repeat, but it was not the real ending. The real ending came much later, on an ordinary rainy afternoon, when I passed a glass display case in the college library and saw my reflection between old trophies. For the first time in either life, I did not see the accused girl, the expelled girl, the girl running after approval, the girl crushed beneath 27 matching lies. I saw a woman carrying books, hair damp from rain, shoulders straight, eyes tired but alive. Behind my reflection, a security camera turned slowly over the library entrance. I looked at it and kept walking. I no longer needed to sit beneath every camera to prove I was innocent. I had learned how to step into the light, yes, but I had also earned the right to leave it when I chose. That was the part Leora never understood. The point was never to be watched. The point was to become impossible to erase.